Gather around, everyone. I'm Jake Graham. I'm reviewing The Nutty Professor, the 1996 flick. Oh boy. There's a lot of stupid writing, a lot of fat to trim off the script for the final draft of this movie that didn't trim out all the bad, stupid ideas for the Night Professor remake. That's right, you probably didn't, those who grew up watching the 90s one probably didn't know that this actually is based off an older movie with the same name called The Night Professor. That gets a split personality after he tries to experiment on himself with his little potion. And gets a more wild, outrageous, jerk version of himself. That's also more of a lazy man in the original. But and you know, like the thing about what I like about the original is that the Night Professor, the original half of the regular normal half of the Professor, and the other half of Professor, that he becomes after he tries his potion, experimenting with and takes it and throws it out personality. What I liked about the original, both halves, I couldn't get enough of either one. I didn't find either one annoying or insufferable. I both found them funny in their own right, and different characters in their own right, and both likable in their own right. About the original. Now, I can't say that about Eddie Murphy's take on the Nutty Professor. I did not like Eddie Murphy as the normal professor. I liked him as the skinny, funny professor. That was very usually just playing an exaggerated version of himself, Eddie Murphy, the comedian. The fat doofus for professor character on one character half, I couldn't stand that character. I just wanted that character to disappear from screen. He's just not a likable character or a funny character. This is the worst Eddie Murphy movie I've seen, next to the movie 1,000 Words, where that movie is the plot twist. That movie is that the only thing that makes Eddie Murphy funny is the things what's killing him, his mouth. In the movie, every time he actually uses his words, he has to lose a life point. And when you lose all of his life points, he dies. When he in Syndicate, so the whole movie he couldn't use his mouth at all to be funny. Oh God. I hear the sequel more than this movie. Nutty Professor 2. Yes, there's a sequel. I'm saving that in another video. For a separate channel another time. Because that came out in the 2000s, a sequel. The first one came out in 1996. The late 90s. Or is that the mid 90s? One of those, so. Lots of the humor is just not that funny. Considering most of the 9% of the humor is fat jokes and fart humor. Nothing but fat jokes, and Dash was a little of number 2 humor. Truly, these are the best jokes the writers could come up with for a big budget comedy. Really. One of the saddest part about this movie, I found Hannibal more funny movie. That's the sequel, this first sequel, that's the sequel to Silence of the Lamb movie, Hannibal. The movie Hannibal, that movie. I found that more funny of a movie, a humorous movie, than this movie. And that was the part where the man was eating his own brain and Hannibal was cooking it. I found that part laughable. More than I found any parts in this movie funny. When fat Eddie Murphy was on screen every time, having a fat suit and telling unfunny jokes. You know, if this was your introduction to Eddie Murphy, his career, you would never think that he was a dirty comedian. If you thought he, you know, and even like that's even when he's like this movie I think six rated PG or G. Why the fuck would you do that? Eddie Murphy can't be funny in kids' film. Have you learned nothing, you nutty professor, from anything? Oh well, actually this movie came out before he started to star in kids' films like Shrek or movie like Thousand Words. That movie was The Blanket when he goes on hunting for his daughter's blanket called Imagine Something. I forget what it's called. Oh God. Is this what started the trend for Eddie Murphy stop being funny? And making such unfunny roles, picking such? Did this start that trend? What made Murphy? Is this what started the trend? What made Murphy unfunny? And because he kept on picking so many unfunny roles that were attention to be funny, but just weren't because they were too kids friendly. You know, I mean, he's fine in the Shrek movies, but that's because he's not the main character. Shrek is. I think if he was the main character, if Donkey was the main character of his own movie, it would flop in a heartbeat. I mean, to be fair, Shrek in the Shrek movies, he did got the bare minimum of adult things to say for a kids' film that they could get away with for the time in the Shrek franchise, the original four. So that's why I think he works better in that movie. That's the only kids film I think he works in well in. Except for Haunted Mansion, but that film wasn't really trying to be funny. It was trying to be more of a serious movie for a kids film. So yeah, this is the worst thing next to A Night Professor 2 and 1,000 Words. This is the worst thing that I think Night Professor Eddie Murphy has done in his career. I think Night Professor is the worst character he's played. The fat character. And, Buddy Love, the character, is funny and all. But I want to say I want to say he's great of a character, funny, or the funniest thing, or like he's just a lot better than the fat character that Eddie Murphy plays. Because it feels like he's playing the typical Eddie Murphy role when he's in the skinny, without the fat costume wearing. For some reason, they want to give Eddie Murphy without the fat costume funny things to say, but fat Eddie Murphy can't have funny things to say. He just always has to be like a sad character. And an annoying one. You know, If the movie never had the fat character that Eddie Murphy plays in the movie, the main protagonist of the movie, wasn't created for this version of the remake, I would have liked this movie a lot more. But we can't have nice things. Can we? That's why I give the Nutty Professor first flick a 3 points out of 10. Goodbye, subscribe, like this video. Bye. See you in my next video, my audience.